The crisp northern winds carried with them the scent of pine and ice as Mira stood on the edge of the vast, snow-covered plateau. She had never felt the kind of pull she felt now, a strange, magnetic force that tugged at her heart, compelling her to continue, step after step, toward a destination she couldn't quite name. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, telling her tales of a forgotten land where the forces of nature converged in perfect harmony, where magic flowed through the very soil, sky, and water. But it was always just a story, a bedtime tale meant to comfort her as a child. Or so she had believed. The young violinist tightened the straps of her weathered leather backpack, her breath visible in the frosty air. She had been traveling for days now, far from the bustling cities of the south to the remote northern reaches. She had left everything behind, her family, her friends, her music academy, all to follow a call she could neither explain nor resist. It had come to her in her dreams. A vision of an endless winter landscape, of ancient trees that seemed to breathe, and a song, faint but persistent, carried on the wind. And then her grandmother's face had appeared in her mind's eye, whispering softly, "You have the gift, Mira. The land is waiting for you." Mira had tried to shake the feeling, thinking it just a fleeting fantasy, but the vision only grew stronger until she could no longer ignore it. The feeling of urgency had driven her to leave behind everything she had ever known. With only her violin and a small satchel of supplies, she ventured into the unknown. Her journey had not been easy. The nights were long and cold, and the path was treacherous, covered with ice and snowdrifts, yet somehow she never faltered. It was as if the landscape itself was guiding her, like the very land was eager for her arrival. There was something ancient and sacred about this place. The further north she traveled, the more she felt the weight of something old and powerful stirring just beneath the surface. Now, standing at the edge of a deep forest, Mira felt that energy more than ever. The trees before her were unlike anything she had seen in her life. Their trunks were vast, gnarled, and twisted, their roots weaving through the snow-covered earth like ancient serpents. A strange blue-green glow emanated from the spaces between the branches, casting an ethereal light over the frozen landscape. It was beautiful, yet otherworldly. A sudden gust of wind swept through the forest, and Mira's violin case shifted against her back. She instinctively reached behind her to steady it. The air was colder now, as though the very atmosphere had thickened with something ancient, something that wanted her to leave. But she couldn't. She had come too far, and the call had become too strong. There was something waiting for her in this forest, something she had to find. With a deep breath, Mira stepped forward, her boots crunching against the snow. She moved cautiously at first, the weight of her footsteps seeming far too loud in the stillness. The further she went, the deeper she entered the heart of the forest. The trees closed in around her like silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching toward the sky, and an eerie silence descended. The sounds of the world seemed to fade away, the wind, the birds, even the crunch of her boots. It was as if the land itself had swallowed all noise, leaving nothing but the soft rustle of leaves and the rhythm of her own breathing. As she continued on, Mira became aware of something else. A melody, faint but unmistakable, seemed to echo through the air. It was unlike any sound she had ever heard before, soft and haunting, like a lullaby from a forgotten time. She paused, her heart racing. Was it real? Or was her mind playing tricks on her after days of isolation? No, this was something more. She followed the sound, stepping lightly, as though afraid to disturb the song. The melody grew louder, clearer, pulling her deeper into the forest. Her breath caught in her throat as she came upon a clearing. The music was louder now, almost tangible, as if it were coming from the very earth beneath her feet. In the center of the clearing stood a large stone circle, its jagged edges covered in frost. At first, Mira thought it was simply an ancient, weathered formation of boulders, but as she drew closer, she realized there was something more to it. The stones were carved with intricate symbols, runes, old and faded, worn by time but still full of power. They glowed faintly with the same blue-green hue that had been emanating from the trees, as if they too were alive, singing in harmony with the land. The music seemed to pulse through the stones, each note a vibration in the air that Mira could feel in her chest. It was beautiful and yet strange. There was an undercurrent of sorrow, of something lost, something waiting to be found. As Mira stepped closer, the ground beneath her feet began to hum, and a soft voice like the wind through the branches whispered her name. Mythical. She froze, heart racing. The voice was gentle, ancient, but there was no one in sight. Her hand instinctively moved to the violin case on her back. The urge to play, to respond to the song, was overwhelming. Without thinking, she unlatched the case, taking out her violin. The feel of the polished wood in her hands was a comfort, and she knew deep within her soul that she was meant to play. The violin had always been her companion, the instrument through which she had expressed every joy, every sorrow, but now it felt like something more. A key, an offering, a bridge between her and the land. With a deep breath, she lifted the bow to the strings and began to play. The first note she played was shaky, uncertain, but as the sound filled the air, it was as if the music responded, coaxing her to continue. The melody grew in strength, rising in harmony with the song already swirling around her. It was as if the earth itself was joining in, each note vibrating through her veins, flowing from her fingertips as though she had always known this song. The trees seemed to sway with the rhythm, their branches rustling like whispers, the stones in the circle glowing brighter with each passing second. The world around her blurred into a dreamscape, a vision of glistening snow, silver rivers, and towering mountains draped in ice. The music carried her beyond the present, beyond time itself. For a moment she was no longer Mira the musician, the girl from the city, but a part of something ancient, something vast. She was one with the land, and the land was alive with magic. Then the music shifted. The melody, once gentle and beautiful, became tinged with a darkness that Mira could feel deep within her soul. The once pure harmony now felt like a warning. The stones around her began to tremble, their runes glowing fiercely, and the air seemed to thicken, heavy with the weight of something forgotten. The wind picked up, whipping through the clearing, and Mira's violin strings began to vibrate violently in her hands, as though the instrument itself was fighting to be heard above the storm. The trees around her groaned, their limbs creaking as if something was moving beneath them. Mira stopped playing, startled by the shift in the music. She lowered her violin, heart pounding in her chest. That's when she saw it. A figure stood in the shadows of the trees at the edge of the clearing, a tall, wiry man with eyes that gleamed like the northern stars. His presence was as imposing as it was mysterious. His robes billowed around him, made of what appeared to be woven frost and ice. He did not speak, but his gaze held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch in her throat. "You have heard the song," he said, his voice low, carrying the weight of ages. "But not all songs are meant to be heard by mortal ears. Mira stood frozen, her violin still clutched in her hands. "Who are you?" The man smiled, though his expression was grave, almost sorrowful. "I am Harp, the keeper of these lands. And you, Mira, have come to fulfill a purpose greater than you can imagine." The wind howled again, and the ground beneath them seemed to shift, as though the very earth were alive. Harbard took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "The land has called you, child of the earth and sky. You are the last of the seers, the one who can hear the song of the world and restore the balance that has long been broken." Mira's heart skipped a beat. The seers? Her grandmother had spoken of them. Legendary figures who could hear the hidden melodies of the world and use that music to heal or destroy. But Mira had thought they were nothing but stories. "Come with me," Harbard continued, extending a hand toward her. "The song has just begun, and you are the only one who can finish it." Mira hesitated, the weight of his words settling over her like a heavy fog. She looked at her violin, then back at him. Something deep within her soul told her that she had come here for a reason, that this land, this song, was her destiny. With trembling hands, she stepped forward, and as she did, the ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse with energy, welcoming her into the embrace of a world she had only dreamed of. The music was just beginning. Mira had always been drawn to music, but her obsession with it had never felt like a mere hobby or talent. It had always felt like a part of her soul, the air she breathed, the rhythm of her heartbeat. Yet, no matter how much she played or how deeply she lost herself in her compositions, something always seemed missing. She had grown up in a city full of noise, constant chatter, bustling markets, and the hum of industry, but it was the stillness she craved. The kind of stillness she had heard about in the stories her grandmother once told her. Stories of a forgotten world to the north, where the land itself hummed with magic, where the trees whispered songs from ancient times, and the mountains held secrets older than the stars themselves. Her grandmother's tales had always been a comforting lullaby. They spoke of a realm where people lived in tune with nature and magic flowed like the rivers of time. Mira had always thought them to be fantastical tales, children's stories designed to spark the imagination but have no place in the real world. Yet, over the years, she found herself feeling restless in the life she had built for herself as a violinist in the busy southern city. Something inside her called out for more. There was an undeniable pull toward the north, toward a place she could neither explain nor understand. Her grandmother's final words to her echoed through her mind. "You have the gift, Mira. The land is waiting for you." And so on a bitterly cold morning in early winter, Mira packed her violin, a handful of supplies, and left her life behind. She boarded the last train heading north, her destination unknown save for the images in her mind. Visions of icy mountains and ancient forests that she had never seen but knew existed, somewhere beyond the reaches of civilization. With each passing mile, the noise of the world faded. The cities gave way to small villages and then to sprawling fields of snow and forests so dense they felt like the world had closed in around her. It had been a week since she left the last town, a journey that had taken her through harsh, unyielding terrain. She had crossed rivers that were frozen solid, walked through forests where the trees were covered in thick layers of ice, and climbed mountains where the wind howled so fiercely it seemed to tear at her soul. But there was something about this place that made her feel alive. The air was thinner, but the crispness of it was invigorating. It was as if the land was speaking to her in a language she had always known, but had long since forgotten. Her mind wandered back to her grandmother's stories as she walked. According to the old tales, the northern lands were the birthplace of the music of the world, a place where the song of creation resonated through every leaf, every stone, every river. The song was the thread that wove everything together, the land, the creatures, the people. And the ones who could hear it were the seers, gifted individuals who could communicate with the magic of the earth through music. They were said to have the power to heal or to destroy, depending on how they wielded the music. Mira had never thought she could be one of them. After all, she was just a young musician with a violin. But the visions that had plagued her dreams, the whispers of a song so pure, so powerful that it made her heart ache, told her otherwise. It was as though the world itself had been waiting for her, calling her to this moment. The northern wilderness was vast and untamed. She had not seen another soul for days, and the silence was overwhelming. The only sound was the crunch of snow beneath her boots and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. As she walked deeper into the forest, she began to feel something strange, an energy in the air, like an electric charge that made her skin tingle. The trees seemed to sway even though the wind had died down, their branches stretching toward her, as though beckoning her forward.